Great to see everybody again. I think just about all of you we know somewhat well, so it's always really great to do this on a quarterly basis, and to also just kind of get group consensus feedback and make sure we're building what is most meaningful. I think everybody here knows our product's kind of always improving, and we're making updates quite a bit, and so everything we do is just building for you. It's building for customers. This started off as the product I wish I always had, and when you build software, you really almost don't know what you're going to be building. And so, we think that as we've just engaged with you, it's gotten better and better. And so, I really mean it sincerely that we could not do this without you. So kind of just diving into it. We'll start off with just what's new in Enaia. What have we shipped recently that maybe you do or don't know about? We try and send out a monthly email, as you may know, of kind of what's new in Enaia over the past 30 days. We'll move into just generally our thoughts on AI and this business. There's so much talk and there's so much, kind of just noise in the space around how quickly are things going to happen, what's the role of the broker in this world, and then we'll move into what's coming soon in Enaia. We'll even show you some of the things we've already built with regards to AI and how we think about it as a platform that has always had this in mind. And so we had to sort of build a really wide application to then find all of the ways sort of in the product, in your workflow, when you would want to use something that's harnessing AI for efficiency, for accuracy. We literally have a document that is hundreds of ideas. And so, the great thing about AI is when you actually have users in a product, if you really dig deep, you can figure out how to sort of save time, make you look smarter, make you faster, and produce better client deliverables. And so we'll show you some of that. So really quickly, what's new in Enaia, and I'm going to sort of bounce back and forth between the product and this, kind of like I did last time. Number one, this was really requested by a bunch of people, of just recurring reminders. And so our reminders are probably one of the most valuable features in the application. You can kind of create them from anywhere. They text your phone, they do all those kinds of things, as you know about. But when you have clients or prospects, you want to say, hey, I want to follow up with this person on a quarterly basis. I want to follow up with this person on a monthly basis. That's actually possible now. You can go ahead and create a reminder and say, remind me of this quarterly. It will do that. You can put a start date and a stop date on when you want to see those routine recurring reminders stop. You can now do that. It's pretty simple. I probably don't even need to show it to you in the application, but when you just create any type of reminder, you'll see recurring. It's defaulted to never, but you can click that and say every Monday at 2 p.m. or once a month or every second Wednesday of the month or whatever you want to do. It's pretty dynamic with what you can do. So we launched that a few weeks back. Improved contact enrichment has been really valuable for a lot of people. We went from a 97% to a 98%, which may not feel like it's meaningful, but you'll see now when you go to create an occupier rep prospect or something that we put a greater emphasis on the size of the company, what type of company it is, to then say, who really are the likely decision makers at that company. And so go ahead and play around with it. Try putting in a huge company, a Pepsi and Amazon. You'll see that for companies like that, you're going to see real estate decision makers. You're not going to see CEO. But if you put in a company like Enaia, you're going to see me. You're going to see founders of startups. You're going to see if it's a Series B, Series C, sort of mid-stage company that maybe has 50 to 100 people. You'll even see things like head of workplace or head of people, because we have all this data on sort of what are the contacts that actually make real estate decisions. And so we've essentially learned through just studying kind of what you're all doing to say, how can we improve the layer of proposing who the suggested decision maker is, to then capture emails and phone numbers. And I want to take a step back just on that, because you may not know it, but we gather that information purely from third-party data companies. Anything you put in doesn't impact anybody else's information that they see. But we also, especially with regards to phone numbers, when you enrich a phone number, we actually don't just take the data that these companies give us, but we actually integrate with companies like Twilio and other applications to go vet and get better accuracy of cell phone data than what you would even get in those standalone products that are built into Enaia. So hopefully that is helpful. This I will show is we are the all accounts view. So let me go to this. Oops. Sorry, there's our product roadmap. The all accounts view in Enaia is, hold on, let me sign in. Is something that we have always, tried to say, how do we keep sort of an Excel-like capability for you to sort of sift through lots of information and data, which is this screen right here. And in many ways, users don't spend as much time in here as they do in the prospect tracker, in the deal pipeline. But there's a couple things that are both recently built, but that are also coming. And I just want to point a couple things out here. So we've made this more dynamic with this side column you see right here, where the user can essentially customize this however they want and hide specific fields. So if I don't care to see the stage, I can just turn that off, or I can sort of move this around. One of the things that's really awesome about this screen is your capacity to sort of search through information really quickly. If I want to say companies that have, more than one location, I can sort of toggle through that. But the investment we're making into this is going to be even better, where I can have drop downs of like, let me look at all of Blue Apron's 7 locations or all of 11 of Cherry's locations. There's a lot more we're going to do here to be able to extrapolate. Hey, I want to drop down to see all of the lease expiration dates for this company. But the big thing that we have shipped is your capacity to curate this and customize it however you want. And so, as you may know, this is a product where you can partner with one another sort of on software the same way you might in real life, where maybe I'm only partnered with one person on Blue Apron, so that person doesn't see any of my other information. But this is all customizable at the user level. So whoever you're partnered with, if you move these things over from place to place and customize this however you want, doesn't impact their view whatsoever. So there's now the contact emails that are in here. If you want to generate a CSV of this, you can just click that button. We now have phone numbers built into this. And so, if you did want to just print something out, do work, and just kind of check things off and put it into an Enaia later, you can do that. But this is actually the beginning of major investments we're going to be making into this. Because of the APIs that we have, we can start creating fields around who the referrals are for certain things, and you can filter based on that. And maybe you don't always want to see that, so you can kind of just pop it in when you want. Maybe we want to show what is the VC funding stage of the company. Like, we capture all of that information today on the back end through our API partners to say, hey, show me all seed stage companies, show me all Series A. What about companies between 500 and 100, or between 50 and 100 employees? What about companies with 1,000 employees or larger? If you just want to sift through all that information, it's the same thing with properties. I want to see properties that are on X amount of acreage of land, where the building is this size. You can sort of customize through all that stuff to be able to sort of start whatever you want, which is leading us to another feature that's coming pretty soon, which is just your ability to click a button that says start canvassing, which will open up any of these cards. And then you can just click next, move through as quickly as possible, canvas as much as you can, and then track that information in your goals here of how many sales activities you're logging in a given week, how many meetings you're booking. So just trying to create the complexity of all of that and make it simple is really kind of the key thing we're really trying to do here. So I just want to point that out as something that's, as we've invested into that list view, it may seem boring, but it actually presents incredible opportunity for you to sift through your information much more dynamically. Prospecting goals is something that in the past couple of weeks we've shipped, probably 2 months ago, where, as I mentioned, at the user level, you can come through and actually say, hey, my personal goal is to make X amount of calls, log X amount of emails, whatever I want to do. I just remember, like it was yesterday, how reactive this business is, where you say, I'm going to block off 2 to 3 hours to do my canvassing, to do my prospecting. But then somebody taps you on the shoulder, they need you, a client calls you, And before you know it, it's Friday and you didn't canvas nearly as much as you wanted to. So the way this will work is if my goal for the week is 200, I've already done 6 for the week and I've booked 4 meetings out of 5. But if I come into any of these prospects and log an activity, let's say I wanted to make a phone call and I called Earl, and I can go ahead and type in any notes. I'll click save. Now I'm at 8. Whoops. Now I'm at 8. And so, or I'm at 7, it added 1 more. And if I, same thing, if I booked a prospect meeting, I can log that activity and say so-and-so is going to be in the meeting, click save. And now I've hit my goal. So one of the things you can do here, this may be particularly valuable for senior team members or somebody who is really managing people, wanting to make sure they're on track, any sort of sales managers, is that the users can actually share their goals. So if I wanted Justin to see a Saturday email once a week that says, here's how many outbound sales activities I did, here's what my goal is, here's how many meetings I booked, here's what my goal was, they'll actually receive an email. So it's something that can be used for more just personal accountability. You can see I'm not hitting my goals just because I don't do this that much, but hopefully it's useful. I think a lot of people didn't even really know we shipped it. So wanted to just point that out, that it's something that you can say, hey, I'm really holding myself accountable to what I'm doing. So going back to this. Oops. Really wanting everybody to know sort of how we think of commercial real estate and AI and what sort of the future looks like here. Again, I think there's a lot of noise in the space. And so I just wanted to give sort of my high level thoughts. I think, if we've learned anything in prop tech over the past few years, it's that the wild ambitions of everything's going to change so quickly is really just not true, right? I think there's a great Bill Gates quote that says, not much changes in a year, but everything changes in a decade. Our thoughts are really that this industry will fundamentally be sort of turned upside down, but it's going to be at a very moderate pace. And I think there's a couple things that really have already been going on even before AI that I think are going to be sped up quite a bit, and what the implications of that really are, which is data democratization. When I went to CB, way back in the day, partly why you went to a company like that was because there was no Zoom info, there was no Google Maps, there was no Google Places. I didn't have the ability to see a tenant roster in a building. And so, wow, CB had this massive research arm that was like, hey, who's on the 5th floor of 195 Broadway, and maybe who's the decision maker, and here's their contact information. And it was a very laborious way of aggregating all of that data that nowadays is ubiquitous. And so what AI is going to do is accelerate that. And that is going to have far-reaching implications of what data really is proprietary. You're going to see a lot of prospect automation as well. You're going to see a lot of, we've even been exploring this type of stuff of, you could go into ChatGPT today and say, hey, give me 10 companies in Nashville that are tech companies that would be good prospects to canvas. And it's going to say, hey, here's 10 companies. So you're going to start to see, in Enaia that, hey, I created a new prospect, and we might say, hey, here's 10 companies we think would be other prospects that are like this based on the size of the company, based on the industry, based on the location. You're going to start to see a lot of things like that start to exist in some capacity to help you turn your brain off a little bit. But this is really going to have implications around what a great broker, how they access information, because that information is democratized, what it means to just have a huge Rolodex. Is that even that valuable? And so you'll see automation built in of, things like, emails being automated that are totally curated to what you might send out. You'll see it at the phone level until I think there's probably regulation around that stuff. But probably the biggest thing is just broker services, I think, are going to be expanded quite a bit. And the reason I say that is because only the broker in commercial real, and 90% of commercial real estate transactions is involved from beginning to end. The attorneys are not involved from beginning to end. The project managers are not involved from beginning to end. It's really only the broker who is holding their client's hand along the way across any type of deal. And so the capacity, and we'll show this to you, the capacity for you as a broker to become a banker and run financial analysis without hardly knowing how to use Excel and have incredibly accurate capabilities to say, here's how all these deals compare, is going to expand the role that you play in a way that enables you to look better in front of your clients. I actually think that AI is going to accelerate the role of the broker, and not diminish it. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who look at other industries and just say, hey, all middlemen get disintermediated. And I don't think that that's true. And I think if you look at finance or trading, if you will, as kind of the most similar industry to this in some ways, I think what you see is you look at, you go back to the 1980s and you look at Bloomberg. And if you watch Wolf of Wall Street, it's one of my favorite movies, you kind of look at what, Matthew McConaughey and Leonardo DiCaprio and those people were like, and they were pretty much salespeople. They were people that were kind of like, it's all about the commission. And this has already been happening in this industry of the elevation of the role and the sort of, professionalism of the industry that's been already happening. But I think that will become supercharged. I think every broker is now capable of being much more involved in transactions. And the emergence of data of Bloomberg, it didn't disintermediate traders. What it did was the person who was sitting, literally on Wall Street, taking tickets and moving them back and forth and, cold calling voraciously, became a trader who's sitting at, a company like Citadel nowadays making millions of dollars, and so much of it is digital. But it is actually elevated. The emergence of data means that brokers are going to become much more data oriented and going to have to be that, because there's going to be a lot more data to process. And some of that's going to be, we're going to know exactly how many tours this building gets and what pricing should be and how it compares to its competitive set. All of that emergence of data is going to be factored into what the price of this space should be and what the value of that land should be. And so this is what I think is really going to happen, that I think brokers are going to need to become more data oriented. And it's really what our mission is as a company, is to put that data about your own business and about market data at your fingertips. So you're not just relying on sort of previous data, but through all of our third-party integrations, as we bring in integrations with products that deal with M&A activity and VC fundraising and all of this stuff, there's going to be so much more data to parse through, to really understand how to sort of when and where to insert your value. And so the fourth point is, as data gets democratized, and this is really going to be impactful. This has always been the case where the client relationship trumps everything, but it is going to be even more valuable. It is going to be even more meaningful to control the customer relationship, because as data is democratized, when a person who's 3, 4, 5 years in the business is as capable of delivering a service as somebody who's 30 years in the business, the competition is going to become increasingly larger. And so the relationship's going to become even more meaningful. And so the pressure to differentiate yourself is going to be much more oriented around how you market yourself than how you just constantly sell. And so you're already seeing that in the business. When I was at CB, nobody went on LinkedIn and posted a bunch of stuff and created marketing assets. It was more sales oriented. But I think, as we all know, marketing and sales are two very different sectors of outbound capabilities to find and win new business. And so I think that harnessing marketing capabilities is something we also want to enable, whether it's mass email capability to send out market reports, whether it's, you close a deal and being able to push it directly to social. But even these are small sort of, we need this in our product now, as opposed to the things that are going to be coming, where there's going to be a need for personalized, increased marketing tactics and something that hopefully your brokerage is investing into. And I think one of the greater things that AI is going to really impact is the relationship that the broker has with the brokerage. And again, I think this has already been an ongoing reality that brokers and brokerages are dealing with. But if all data becomes fairly democratized, and it won't always be fully democratized, there will always be value in your proprietary data sets. But as that data becomes more available, as you're capable of using a technology like Enaia and producing best-in-class marketing assets and client reports, and as if a full, huge marketing team put these things together, there does become some tension of like, what is my split to the house now? And do I even need to be paying that? Having said that, you're starting to see a whole ton of contracts being signed with at a level in the business that I think 10, 15, 20 years ago didn't exist. You didn't see vice presidents at a brokerage signing longer term contracts. And so I think you're going to start to see a lot of this, which is essentially a mechanism for the brokerage to say, hey, look, we're investing something into you, and we need to know that you're going to be here for X amount of time. But it is definitely some friction that I think is going to occur, which is for many, many brokers, going from brokerage A to brokerage B is just taking off a jersey, putting on a new one, and being on a different team, and nothing really changes about their business. And so for many, many brokers, I think that the ball is moving in the direction of the broker, at least, let's put it that way. Where the puck is going is that brokers have more autonomy, more capability to deliver better customer service without the need of this massive sort of engine behind them, whether it's the very huge, large brokerages or sort of any brokerage in some capacity. And so what does this mean? We don't know. But I think that the emergence of AI is going to play a role in that, when you can be negotiating a deal and it can bring in contract management data or your construction management data and project management information. And all of these things are going to play a role where you can deliver a 100x service with very minimal input or need to be an expert in a given field. And so the disputes that we all know about that exist over sort of who owns the data, is it the broker or the brokerage? When you have that data very democratized, it's a very hard conversation to have with your brokerage of, hey, like, is this my data? Is this the brokerage's data? Of course, the brokerage would say, you're a contractor here, and so it's all our data. And the broker would say, these are my clients, this is my information. I think that dispute is going to create greater friction, and how it all shakes out, who knows? But one of the big questions is, does it make the large brokerages more valuable or less? And I could see it going either way. In some capacity, I could see it going in favor of the broker, where the brokerage is far less valuable. But in other ways, as I think about, this is still a business to business model, not a business to consumer model, like residential brokerage, say. So the value of being at a large brokerage for the network, because one of the things that I think, as you can work on more transactions, do more deals, because all of the steps along the way become really AI enabled, the network of how many brokers you can interact with, I think you're going to start to see larger, bigger, better teams that cross cities, that cross maybe even countries. And I think this is one of the questions of what will this fully look like? If that's the case, where it is, you need to be on a huge team, and information is shared really across different markets. And I know somebody who was in New York, and he's running landlord agencies in South Florida, and because the client said, hey, we want you to be on this, we just bought a building down there. And so those network effects in some capacity, I think, favor the large brokerage model, but that could go either way. I think it's going to be really interesting. But lastly, what won't change? And I think that this is, probably the most important question to ask. People always want to know what's going to change. Jeff Bezos sort of has a great bit where he says the most important question is what will not change. And in today's climate, this industry's already been so heavily impacted by AI that what won't change is the centralization and the need for brokers. The way I always describe it is brokers provide full-time expertise for very moment in time transactions. And so not just on the investment sales side where there's off-market opportunities that brokers always know about through their relationships, but in the leasing side as well, it just is not cost efficient for most companies to say, let's go hire a bunch of heads of real estate. It's so much more cost efficient to say, let's retain somebody for this transaction. Let's actually get the expertise of somebody who's deeply in the market for a transaction. And I think that's not going to go away. I think that that's actually going to move more in the direction of this industry because of the nature of how brokers insert themselves at the right time and are sort of the first to information and sharing information, seeing opportunities. I remember a really senior broker saying, like, we are not in the transaction business as much as we are in the information business. And your capacity to create ideas around how deals can be done, where there's opportunity, that's not going anywhere. And this is not a federally regulated industry like finance, where it can be software optimized so easily. Every city is different, every town is different, every how rent is quoted is different, how rent structures are different. Everything is different at a very local level. And so the capacity to need expertise, I mean, I would say, even if you're a head of real estate at a huge company, a huge portion of your business is just managing the local brokers in all the different markets that you're in, because you can't possibly know market in any given city in real time and be fully responsible for the decisions without any sort of local boots on the ground. And so the need for brokerage services is, I think, going to increase. The trend of companies outsourcing is going up and has been for a while. I don't think that's going to stop. And so I think that this business is extremely well positioned for what's going to happen. And I only say that because one of the questions I get asked more than anything is like, what is the future of our business when all of this stuff is changing? And I think it's really positive. I think all of us know, who have been in the business for a long time, have been hearing brokers are going away, they're going to get disintermediated. And, to this day, they still represent 90% of the industry's transactions. And that's probably going to continue to grow. So I think there's an expanded role of the broker going forward. And I think everybody should be excited about that. So that's kind of just how we think about things, which leads us into sort of the next conversation of what are we doing with AI? We've built a very wide platform. And we've done it thanks to you, and it's taken a long time to sort of like really dive into how our users work, what they really care about. I think that the mantra that you hear from so many startups of like, close more deals faster, I think is one of those things where there's only so much you can control as a broker. So that's not a message that resonates. It's about organization. It's about efficiency. It's about being able to look great in front of clients, build bigger, better teams to be more successful. And we've tried to live there instead of saying, like, we can't control if a board has to make a decision around the lease, and like, that's not in your control. So close more deals faster is something that we could care less about. If there's ways to enable you to do more faster, that's great, but it's all about how brokers work as far as how we see things. And so we are nearly completed with this really critical part of the workflow in Occupier Rep. And so I'll show you that right now on a test server. But when I'm in Enaia, let me zoom in a bit on this. When I'm in Enaia, and if I'm doing Occupier Rep business, and by the way, this is a test server, full disclosure, so there's a lot of ugly things here. When I've created these deals, if I represent Prezi and we do a whole bunch of deals all over the place, I can now click into a deal. I can now add tours. I can now run the financials. And I can also see a full negotiation analysis of all the properties we're negotiating with. So I can click into this and see that, hey, we're negotiating at 195 Broadway. We're also negotiating at 205th. And this UI is not completed yet, but here's the landlord's proposal that we received. Here's the occupier's proposal that we're sending out. and we can sort of run the full end-to-end negotiation. What really makes this exciting, as we see it, is that how do we get to these numbers? So in the past for landlord rep, what we've had is something where, you can go in and you can actually add LOI and you can say, hey, here's the deal. Let me just sort of say this is for unit, 1,000 and it's 10,000 feet and, there's a loss factor of 14%. Maybe this deal commences on this date and it's a 10-year deal, right? This takes time. This is one of those things where it's great that it's there. It's probably better than trying to go be a really great Excel wizard. And we can sort of do that and then add the TI and what the expenses are versus the landlord allowance and add a whole bunch of those. Within a couple of weeks, what you'll get is the capacity to come in, take a proposal, add an LOI, and drag it from your email, but just come in and basically have the AI run the full financial analysis. So this might take a couple seconds, and we're still doing a lot of work on this, but this is really where we're going with this. And the next layer of this will be by being embedded in your email client, we see that you received a proposal, and now all of a sudden we've run the numbers for you. And so you can see here for this deal, it's a triple net deal. We've captured that. It's 304,000 feet. It's a 5-year term with 1 month free. There's, I guess no months free. The rent is $6.15 a foot. It's probably an industrial deal. The escalations start at 3.75% a year. There's 300 grand in TI, and here's the operating expenses built into this. So your capacity to just then move forward, save it, upload the file if you want, and then actually generate your client report, which is right here. This is for the occupiers as well as the AI will also exist for the landlord rep reports that we have to say this is fully white labeled. There's no powered by Enaia, and you can come through and say, here's the sort of summary of this. Here's the occupancy costs of what they look like over the term. Here's the total scenario costs. Here's your client's out-of-pocket costs. Here's the negotiation analysis of the asking terms were this, our proposal was this, the landlord's response was this, and to move through and at a certain point say, okay, we're only $2.62 a foot apart here, we're $4 apart here. How are we really trending? And then have these pretty complicated or pretty dynamic cash flow analyses produced in seconds. And the only reason I show this one is because we're showing essentially a 25-year term here. We're trying to make sure that this is very dynamic in its design. We're seeing even accounting metrics of the straight line rent analysis, what the deferred rent and rent liability is, all the way down to what are the net effective rents and the more obvious results here. So you'd see this for every property. So this is imminently going to be shipped. I would propose probably in 30 days to be safe. And we're really excited about this just because it looks like a marketing team put it together. Hopefully, would love your feedback on the design of everything. Your client, your logo's on here. As you guys know, there's no powered by Enaia, reference to it. It looks like you produced it yourself. And you could literally just leave a tour, go ahead and send out the proposals, and then within 20 minutes, go ahead and send your client and say, hey, here's all the proposals we submitted. Here's where the deal stands at the moment. And we will get better and better about this. There's some things still missing in here. Even in the total scenario cost, this will say, hey, you'll put in what your client's currently paying, and it'll say, hey, this is 30% more than what you're currently paying. This is 20% less. So we're still doing some work on this, but hopefully we've been working with a whole bunch of you on this. So hopefully that's valuable. And as well as this has been requested by a whole lot of people of actually putting your entire stacking plan of a building you're leasing into Enaia to have all of the critical dates pop up and appear. And so this is actually coming very soon, probably within 2 weeks would be my guess. you'll be able to upload your entire stacking plan in Enaia, get reminders of the lease expiration dates, search for who contacts are at those companies, really make sure that you're trying to take all the notes you need to take, save the files and the leases so you have all that information, move a deal to close, which will then update the stacking plan. And so this has been something that's been asked for by a whole ton of people. The next piece after this is at the landlord rep level is going to be creating who we're tracking for this landlord agency, which has been a huge request as well. So instead of creating a tenant rep prospect, you can actually at the asset level say, hey, here's the 15 companies we're going to, which will impact the report of whatever we did for that. And so you'll have a more dynamic landlord rep report as well. And so across both of these features, in about a year, it's a much bigger project. You will be able to share a link with your client to also track this information in real time. So if you're doing a large multi-market occupier account or just a single deal, you'll be able to send a link to your client and say, hey, here's a link as we start this transaction. As you expand and have more locations, you can track that all here. That whole experience of theirs will be fully white labeled to you, and you'll be able to sort of digitally provide a service to your client where they can track everything. You can see when they logged in, you can see how much they're tracking it. And ideally, for both occupier and landlord rep, they're now more dependent upon you to see this information. And so this is one of the also most commonly requested features, and really kind of the last one. This is also pretty far along in development right now, which is when you create reminders or to-dos, you'll be able to send them to other people. You'll be able to share them with other people so you both get the reminder. We're pretty far along with this. And so that pretty much concludes kind of like what's imminently coming right now. And so any feedback you have, we obviously love to hear it. We sort of live off of it. Happy to send you designs of this stuff if you want to weigh in on it. But we try and do this quarterly and just kind of get together with our users and just kind of say, hey, here's kind of like what we're really working on, what you can expect very soon as we're constantly making improvements in the application. And so, Justin, I don't know if there's any questions, but we can just open it up.
Thanks, David. We've had a couple that have come through. So the first is the reports that you show. There's a question, the report's going to be customizable.
I think we'd want to know, I mean, we always sort of look for what you would want to customize. I think there's, creating anything that's overly customizable. I think we've tried to account for just about everything. It depends on the report, I guess. If it's like cover pages and that kind of stuff, we've thought about like, do we enable you to change colors? So I think we want to understand what you'd want to customize first, because maybe we're missing something that actually should just be in the report. And so if you can type in the comments what you'd want to see customized, that would be most useful.
That's great. There's another one here. Any plans to create a tool to collaborate with clients on deals so they can track the deal status and communicate through Enaia? The subtext there, sort of like Anthem IQ, if their product actually worked.
I didn't say that.
I'm just reading. Reading. That's not what I said.
Yeah, so that's what I went back to, which is that's exactly where we're getting at, is that you can have a singular command center for your business to also be sharing it with clients, where you can literally say, hey, here's everything we're going to see on the tour. You can leave comments here. Here's, as we start negotiating, they'll see a view probably pretty similar to, hey, property A, we've got 3 proposals that we've gone back and forth on. They can see the financial analysis in real time. You'll see a lot more metrics and data yourself that even are more than what the client will see. But yes, the answer is that's 100% on our roadmap.
Got a couple more that came in through chat here. So what are your thoughts on Enaia draft writing or draft creating emails through AI?
Very, very likely and very, very soon. We've done it a little bit where if I even just go into the product, let's say I have a reminder and underscore VC's lease is expiring in 12 months. I can click email contacts and we have an email here. We have not taken this to the level we want to get to where it's parsing through all of your email communication, capturing things that maybe are kind of personal that you've talked about. But let's say this, so this is, if I read this, yeah, I would probably want to slightly edit this and maybe just like strip out, you know, that. But yeah, we've tried to tailor this to with a bunch of prompts around sort of like what a broker, what a really elite broker, how they would communicate to a client around sort of what they do. If this was a client reminder about a lease expiration date, it would read much more casually. We've definitely fed a lot of prompts around that stuff. This is one of, on that list of just hundreds of ideas that we have. There are components of, hey, there's a meaningful news article. So if I see that there's news here and I want, instead of just clicking copy link and then email, so like right now I can just copy the link and I could send an email to somebody, but really I should be able to click send an email about this article and it reads the article and maybe says something that might be more meaningful based on your workflow, based on sort of everything you've done. And so that is, we've actually built a lot of the architecture for the customization of emails, whether it's a lease expiration date email, whether it's a news update email. But yes, the answer is expect to see a lot more sort of AI generation of how, especially on the prospecting front, which kind of goes back to the piece I mentioned, which is, you know, kind of the leveling up, sort of the equalization of what is going to happen in this business, where somebody can be a year in the business or, you know, 5 days in the business and use Enaia and start sending out sales emails and not be in the situation we probably were all in some capacity, that when I got into this business, I'm supposed to go out and sell something that I've never even really done. And so, you know, I think it will bring in a lot of best practices around how people do outbound sales and communicate and speak in a very sort of professional manner without really knowing how to do it. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, the last one I had here is, when is the mobile app coming out?
This is our most common question that we get probably by far. I could probably think of it's one of 20 people that get on me all the time about this. Yeah, the mobile app is something we need to do. We need to make sure that gets done pretty quickly, and we've just always tried to sort of build on top of the existing application, but it is something that we should be trying to get done before the end of the year.
That's great. Well, thanks, y'all. Obviously, not your last chance to be able to ask questions. Feel free to reach out to David or myself if you have any more questions. We will be sending out the recording of the webinar afterwards, and we'll upload it to YouTube. So thank you guys for joining. And David, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, I mean, there's no last word really. It's mostly just thank you. And, you know, anything I said here, if you have questions or follow-ups, feel free to just reach out to me directly. Always happy to hop on a Zoom. Happy to send you any of the designs of stuff we're working on if you want to opine on that. I would particularly love to hear what you want to customize in reports, because maybe that's something we should just be including in general. And maybe it's a feature where we should let you customize things on your own to the capacity we can. One thing that's worth mentioning is I do believe we will enable you to export the Excel file in its actual working state. So when clients say, hey, can you send me this file so I can tweak the numbers or at least see how you arrived at this, we should be able to go ahead and enable you to export a pretty robust Excel file for you to do that. And so to the degree that the analysis is customizable, it can kind of be dealt with that way. But I'm sure there's other things we haven't thought through. So would love to catch up with whoever asked that question. But thank you guys. Again, we'll do this again in a quarter. All the things that we mentioned will have been shipped by then, and we'll have new items on the docket. And I promise you we'll be dealing with mobile at that point. So you have my word. And just appreciate everybody. I mean, honestly, it's very humbling to have gotten to this place now where we have so many people just kind of living and dying in the product, and it really is awesome to see. So again, reach out to me or Justin with any questions, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks a lot.